Anthony Albanese is officially set to meet the Chinese President Xi Jinping at the G20 summit in Brazil. Live to our political editor Andrew Clennell in Rio De Janeiro. Andrew, what more can you tell us about this?
Good morning to you, Kenny, and good morning, viewers. Well, we can tell you that around midnight Australian time, Monday night, Anthony Albanese will hold his third one-on-one meeting that he's had with President Xi Jinping in 2 years. The first was in Bali at a G20. Last year he met him in Beijing, and now he's set to meet him here in Rio de Janeiro for the G20 summit. And very different circumstances around this one, Kenny. There was a trade war between Australia and China, you'll remember, which was the subject of the first two discussions. Now we're about to see a trade war between China and America, with Donald Trump, once he hits power, threatening a 60% tariff on Chinese imports. So no doubt that will come up in these discussions. This comes after a meeting at the APEC between outgoing President Joe Biden and Xi Jinping, where Xi Jinping said that he wanted to see a close relationship with the US when the new administration takes power.
China is ready to work with the new US administration to maintain communication, expand cooperation and manage differences, so as to strive for a steady transition of the China-US relationship for the benefit of the two peoples.
So I interviewed the Prime Minister for the Sunday Agenda program, and I put to him, if he does meet President Xi as we expected, then we now know it's on, would he raise this US-China tariff dispute or have any advice for him? The Prime Minister said he'd stay out of it.
That's a matter between China and the United States. My job is to advocate for Australia's national interests. I leave bilateral relations between other countries to them.
There's also been talk of a tariff between 10 and 20% on Australian imports to America. And, of course, Scott Morrison and Malcolm Turnbull managed to kill proposals in Donald Trump's last government around this. So I asked the PM if he could do the same. He said he was going to work on it with Donald Trump. Scott Morrison and Malcolm Turnbull were able to talk Donald Trump out of imposing tariffs on Australia. Do you think you'll be able to do the same?
Well, I, of course, will always stand up for Australia's interests. And when I spoke with President Trump, I pointed out, as I'm sure they did, that the United States has enjoyed a trade surplus with Australia since Truman was president, so for a long period of time. So the trade between Australia and the United States is in both of our nations' interests.
An issue on this overseas tour has been Kevin Rudd, the ambassador to Washington, after a key aide, Dan Scavino, to the president, tweeted that his time was running out, essentially. And the Prime Minister very much defending his ambassador, who of course also has China experience, saying that he would be in place well after the next federal election. Do you think he'll be there for another year or more?
Yes, he's Australia's ambassador to Washington, and he's doing a very important job.
How do we get to this point, I guess, where Donald Trump's saying we're going to have a perfect friendship, and then a week later one of his right-hand men is tweeting this hourglass about saying Kevin Rudd's running out of time?
Well, I'm not going to comment on someone who I don't know and have never had a discussion with. The discussion I had with President Trump was very constructive and very positive.
And didn't mention Kevin Rudd?
No.
So a rest day for Anthony Albanese. He actually attended church today before this big day of meetings. He's also meeting the UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and the President of the European Union. But the big one is this Xi Jinping bilateral meeting just a couple of months before Donald Trump takes office, Kenny.
Andrew Clennell, thank you. We'll talk to you again soon.